Millionaire's quadruplets drove every maid away until a nanny tamed them. If someone told you that the 4 sons of Dr. Mercer had driven 15 nannies to quit in just 8 months, would you believe it? It sounds like a dinner table exaggeration meant to get a laugh, but it's entirely true. And this isn't just a story about mischievous kids. Behind it lies a journey of loss, silence, and a second chance to love. Their names were Aiden, Noah, Caleb, and Micah Mercer. Aiden was 12, Noah 10, Caleb 8, and little Micah only 6. They lived with their father, Daniel Mercer, a renowned heart surgeon, in a large home on the outskirts of Boston. That house had once been filled with laughter from dawn until nightfall, until the day Laura, their mother, was gone forever. The accident happened on a rainy night 2 years earlier. Laura had left the house still heavy with frustration after an evening of chaos. The boys had argued, shouted, and made a mess during dinner, and when Laura decided to drive out to buy the cake they had begged for, no one imagined it would be the last time they'd see her alive. A drunk driver plowed into her car at an intersection less than 3 blocks from home. From that day on, everything changed. Daniel tried to stand tall, to be the pillar his sons could lean on, but the harder he tried to be strong, the more distant he became. Silences stretched longer. Meals were filled only with the clink of cutlery. Conversations broke into fragments until the connection was completely gone. The once energetic, affectionate boys became closed-off fortresses, cold and impossible to read. They didn't just refuse to open up, they found ways to push everyone away. When the first few nannies left, Daniel assumed the boys just needed time to adjust. But when the 5th, the 10th, and then the 15th walked away, faces a mix of exhaustion and relief, he knew this wasn't about getting used to someone new. Some left in tears saying, "I can't take another day, Dr. Mercer." Others stormed out in the middle of the night after being pranked to their breaking point. Aiden once jammed beans into a nanny's bedroom lock so she couldn't open the door. Noah secretly swapped every spice in the kitchen, turning breakfast into a disaster. Caleb and Micah teamed up to launch a water gun battle in the living room, drenching the TV and the bookshelves. Though Daniel was intelligent, logical, and precise in his profession, he was powerless against 4 young hearts drifting further from his reach. Every night he passed by Laura's bedroom, the door locked since the day she died, but never dared to open it. He clung to a naive thought. If he didn't touch the pain, maybe it wouldn't feel so real. But that only pushed him and his sons even farther apart. The Mercer home still stood solid with brick walls and a tiled roof, but inside, invisible bricks had been falling away for years. No one knew how to rebuild them, and no one could have guessed that change would come from a woman with no degree, no official experience, and a past full of her own scars. The Mercer nanny crisis began as a string of small incidents, then quickly grew into a drawn-out nightmare. The first to leave was Margaret, a woman in her 50s who had cared for dozens of difficult children. She lasted 4 days. On her last day, she cried at the doorway, suitcase in hand, mumbling, "I can't do anything for them. They don't want anyone here." The second, a college student named Kyle, thought he could handle 4 energetic boys. On the 3rd morning, he woke to find all his clothes hanging from the tree in the front yard, covered in mocking sticky notes. He left before breakfast. The ones that followed didn't fare much better. One young nanny was ambushed with a water balloon fight the moment she stepped through the door. Another had every Wi-Fi password and door code changed, to the point where she had to call the police just to get out. One was woken in the middle of the night by the fire alarm, only to discover it was Caleb and Micah's idea of an emergency drill. At first, Daniel tried to defend his sons. "They're just testing the boundaries with someone new," he told himself. But when the 5th nanny quit mid-shift, he began to sense something deeper. With a surgeon's intuition, he realized this wasn't mere mischief. The prank seemed calculated, executed with precision, coordinated like a team that had trained for months. No one but the 4 Mercer boys knew each nanny's weakness, and they exploited it without mercy. The 12th nanny, Denise, was a prime example. She loved kids, was patient, and had worked at a summer camp for troubled youth. But in less than 2 weeks, she left, her face pale as chalk. When Daniel asked why, she said only one thing: "They don't want to be saved. They want me to give up." That thought stayed with him. He remembered the cold looks his sons gave whenever a new nanny arrived. No curiosity, no excitement, just the look of boys preparing for battle. And they were right. Each opponent was taken down within days. Even the child care agencies began refusing. Clary, Daniel's office manager, called every contact she had, only to get the same polite but firm reply: "We're sorry, but your family is on our do not assign list." One crisp autumn morning, as Daniel sat in his office, Clary walked in with a face full of worry. "Daniel, I've called everyone I know, but no one will take the job." "No one?" "No one. They say, the boys have a reputation now." Daniel leaned back in his chair, his eyes drifting to a stack of patient files he no longer had the focus to read. He could repair a broken heart with a scalpel and sutures, yet he was powerless against the breaking hearts of his own children. Outside, the 4 boys carried on their war. And Daniel knew that unless he found someone patient and understanding enough to stay, the house would keep sinking deeper into its cold, empty silence. News that no one would take the Mercer nanny job had kept Daniel awake for nights. Each time he looked out at the quiet front yard, he could see plainly how far the house had drifted from what it used to be. One weekend afternoon, while Daniel was trying to focus on a patient's file, Clary appeared in the doorway, holding a cup of coffee and wearing a strange mix of hesitation and hope. "I know someone, not from any agency." Daniel looked up. "Who?" "Her name's Isabella Vega. People call her Izzy. She's 27, no degree in education or psychology, but she's worked with families, like yours." "No degree? No official experience?" "Experience, yes. Just not the kind that fits on paper. Izzy was once a child who lost her mother early, and she knows exactly how that changes you." Daniel sat still for a moment. Part of him wanted to dismiss the idea outright, but another part was exhausted enough to try anything. "Bring her in to meet me." The day Izzy arrived, Boston's air was crisp and cool. She stepped in wearing a simple gray sweater, worn jeans, and her hair tied back. No elaborate makeup, no attempt to impress. But her eyes were different, steady, observant, as if she could hear the things people weren't saying out loud. "You can tell me everything, not the edited version, the truth." Izzy's voice was low, certain. Daniel told her. He spoke about Laura, about the accident, about the cold silence that followed, and about 4 sons slowly disappearing inside their own home. He talked for over an hour, while Izzy simply nodded, occasionally asking, "Have you ever told them that you're hurting too?" When he finished, Izzy laid out 4 conditions. She would have full authority over the boys during working hours, as long as no physical or emotional harm came to them. She needed access to Laura's room, locked for 2 years. Pain kept sealed becomes poison. To heal, we have to face it. All 4 boys would attend therapy, whether they wanted to or not. Daniel himself had to attend therapy. "You're in pain, and you're parenting through it. To save them, you have to start with yourself." Daniel was silent for a long time. No one had ever spoken to him like that. "Do you agree, or should I walk away?" Izzy asked, eyes unwavering. After a pause, Daniel nodded. "I agree. When can you start?" Izzy gave a soft smile. "Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. The next morning, exactly at 7, the doorbell rang. Daniel opened the door to find Izzy standing there in a hoodie, track pants, running shoes, and a small bag in hand. "Ready for battle?" Daniel asked, half joking. Izzy smiled. "I didn't come to fight, Dr. Mercer. I came to bring peace." But the young warriors inside had other plans. The moment Izzy stepped into the kitchen, all 4 boys were seated around the table, eyes sharp with challenge. Aiden sat with his arms crossed like a commander, Noah's eyebrows arched mischievously, Caleb and Micah pretending innocence but already wearing secretive grins. Operation 1, breakfast disaster. The sugar had been swapped with salt, the orange juice spiked with vinegar, the chairs taped so anyone who sat would get stuck. Izzy sat down calmly, took bread, spread butter, and never touched the jam. "Don't you put sugar in your coffee?" Noah asked casually. "I don't drink coffee with sugar." "What about orange juice?" Caleb suggested. "I don't drink orange juice in the morning." The boys exchanged glances. Half the plan had already failed. Micah quickly poured himself a glass, took a sip, and instantly grimaced, spitting it out. "You! Sour!" Izzy took the carton, sniffed it lightly. "Vinegar, and I'd guess someone added it earlier this morning." Her eyes passed over Aiden. The eldest just shrugged innocently. Well, maybe it was the kitchen ghost? Izzy didn't argue, just smiled. Ghost or not, breakfast continues. Operation 2, Haunted Photos. After breakfast failed, Caleb and Micah tried the next trick, placing photos of their mother, Laura, in unexpected spots. The reading chair, the sink, the kitchen counter. They wanted to see how Izzy would react. She simply picked up each photo gently, placing it in a small wooden box on a high shelf, without complaint. Operation 3, The Whispering Ghost. At lunch, Noah hid behind the couch, whispering in a drawn-out, eerie tone, Izzy. "Noah, if you want to talk, come here," Izzy said, eyes still on her book. "I'm not Noah." The voice grew raspier. "All right, when the ghost is done playing, send Noah over." Noah froze, crawled out from behind the couch, part confused, part curious. "Do you believe in ghosts?" "I believe in memories that haunt us, and I believe the people we love, even after they're gone, stay in our hearts." The answer left Noah silent, unsure what to say. The first moment of shift. That afternoon, Micah, the youngest, suddenly asked, "Do you know our mom didn't like it when we fought?" Izzy smiled. "I guessed as much." "She used to make superhero cakes on Sundays," Caleb added. "And she danced with us in the yard when it rained," Noah said quietly. The air slowed. Aiden, the one who always acted toughest, lowered his head, voice trembling. "We don't talk about Mom. Dad says so." Izzy's voice was gentle. "Not talking doesn't mean she disappears from your heart. Maybe you're afraid that bringing her up will hurt more, but sometimes to hurt less, you have to feel it. Together." The boys didn't reply, but their eyes were different, less guarded, more unsure. Izzy knew the battle had only begun, but for the first time, she saw a small door begin to open. 3 days after Izzy started, things still felt like a drawn-out chess match. The boys had toned down the blatant mischief, but the guarded look in their eyes remained. Izzy didn't push, she simply observed, memorizing every reaction. That afternoon, light rain fell. Daniel was called to the hospital, leaving Izzy in charge. All 4 boys sat in the living room, pretending to watch TV, but their restlessness was obvious. Izzy chose to sit nearby, knitting quietly, not intruding. Micah, the youngest, was the first to break the silence. "Miss Izzy, if my mom hadn't gone out that night, she'd still be alive, right?" The question made the other 3 whip their heads toward him, as if he'd broken an unspoken rule. Izzy set her needles down gently. "Why do you think that?" Micah looked down. "Because that night, we made her mad." Aiden, always the protective one, jumped in quickly. "Micah, don't." "It's okay," Izzy said. "You can all talk." And then the truth spilled out in pieces. The night of the accident, all four refused to eat dinner, arguing loudly. Their mother, Laura, had shouted in exhaustion. Then, wanting to make peace, she said she'd go out to buy the cake they'd been asking for since morning. "She wanted to make us happy, but she never came back," Caleb said, his voice raw. "If we'd behaved," Noah whispered, "she wouldn't have gone out." Aiden's fingers dug into his knees, his lips trembling as if the words were tearing their way out. "So, it's our fault?" he whispered, and for a moment it felt like the air had been punched out of the room. Izzy felt her chest tighten. Finally, she understood. These weren't just children grieving their mother. They were children who had been sentencing themselves for 2 years. She knelt, looking each boy in the eye. "Listen to me. The accident happened because a drunk driver hit her. It was not your fault." "But if," Caleb began. "No ifs," Izzy cut in, her voice firm but gentle. "What if she left 5 minutes earlier? What if she took a different road? What if that driver hadn't been drinking? We can build 1,000 ifs and still not change the truth." Silence. Tears began to fall. "Your mom had days when she was tired, sad, or frustrated, but she still loved you every single day. She went out that night because she wanted to make you happy, even when she was tired and upset. That only proves how incredible she was." Aiden dropped his head into his hands, shoulders shaking. Noah and Caleb wrapped their arms around Micah, and all four cried, not the angry, defiant sobs Izzy had heard before, but a breaking open. She held them all, letting them cry as long as they needed. When their breathing slowed, she said, "You've carried a weight that never belonged to you for 2 years. And in doing so, you forgot how to live the life your mom wanted for you." "She wanted us to be happy," Micah whispered. "That's right. And the best way to honor her is to live fully, create beautiful memories, and be kind to each other." For a long time they sat there, 4 boys and 1 woman, breathing in the kind of silence that heals instead of hurts. Outside, the rain slowed to a soft drizzle, tapping against the windows like a lullaby. In that moment, the house didn't feel so heavy anymore. It felt almost safe. That night, Daniel came home to find his sons talking about their mother, crying and laughing at the same time. He sat down, listening. Then Caleb said quietly, "Dad, we thought we were the reason she died." Daniel froze. "Oh my God, why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because we were afraid you'd leave too if you knew," Noah sobbed. Daniel pulled them all close. "Never. The accident happened because of a drunk driver, not because of anything you did." He looked up at Izzy. Her small nod said everything. Daniel knew that from this day on, the house would begin to change. After that rainy afternoon, something in Dr. Mercer's house seemed to have been lifted. Not gone entirely, but lighter, noticeably so. The next morning, instead of the cold stares when Izzy walked into the kitchen, the 4 boys simply glanced at her, then went on with breakfast. No vinegar in the orange juice, no tape on the chairs. Izzy didn't speak much about what had happened. She just went on doing ordinary things, making breakfast, driving the boys to school, helping with homework. But the silence no longer felt tense. A week later, Noah voluntarily told Izzy about his school basketball game. Caleb showed off a drawing of a superhero he'd made. Micah brought her a caterpillar he found in the garden. Aiden stayed reserved, but sometimes Izzy caught him looking at her, not with challenge anymore, but as if weighing whether to place his trust. Then came Izzy Day. She had no idea until she walked into the living room one Saturday afternoon. The whole place was decorated with paper streamers, balloons, and a hand-scrawled sign. Happy Izzy Day. On the table sat a homemade cake, slightly lopsided, with icing letters that read, "Still Here." "What's today?" Izzy laughed in surprise. "It's the day you came to our house," Caleb said. "The day this family could breathe again." "We don't know your birthday, so we decided this would be the day we celebrate," Aiden added. Daniel stepped forward, handing her a small box. Inside was a silver necklace engraved with the words, "Still here." Izzy couldn't speak. She just smiled, feeling her heart warm. From that day, she was no longer the nanny. She was part of the family. Daniel changed too. He began attending therapy as promised, learning how to share his feelings with his sons. In the evenings, he'd listen to their school stories, play chess with Aiden, cook with Noah, garden with Caleb and Micah. Izzy realized that the miracle wasn't in things becoming perfect. There were still moments when Aiden argued with Noah or Micah refused to clean his room. But now, instead of avoiding or rebelling, the boys knew how to circle back, say sorry, and start again. After 2 years of silence and fracture, Dr. Mercer's house finally heard laughter again, not the forced kind, but the real kind, echoing off every wall. Since Izzy Day, Daniel had begun looking at her differently. Not as an employer looks at an employee, but as a man realizing someone is holding his family together. They started sharing quiet moments. In the evenings, after the boys were asleep, Daniel would stand beside Izzy at the sink. He washed, she dried. Sometimes their eyes would meet, and they'd smile without needing words. Once, after Aiden finished a chess game with Daniel and went to bed, leaving the board mid-game, Daniel lingered, putting away the pieces slowly. Izzy walked over and sat across from him. "You're good at chess?" "A habit from med school. Chess forces you to think 3 moves ahead." "Kinda like parenting, isn't it?" Izzy said, half joking. Daniel looked up, his eyes deeper. "I wish I'd thought further ahead 2 years ago." One Sunday evening, while the boys played on the porch, Daniel and Izzy sat in the kitchen, the sunset light streaming through the window. Daniel's hand inched forward on the table, hesitating halfway, as if afraid the smallest movement might break the fragile peace they'd built. Then, with a slow breath, he turned his palm up, an invitation, not a demand. Izzy glanced down, then gently placed her hand in his. His fingers closed, just enough to hold. "Izzy, I know this isn't what you came here for. This isn't the life you planned." She held his gaze. But the way you walked into my life, the way you see my sons, and the way you look at me, it made me realize I've been afraid for too long. And for the first time, I don't want to hide anymore." Izzy didn't answer right away, just felt her eyes grow warm. "I don't know if I'm ready for everything love means, but I know I don't want to leave. Not this house, not you, and definitely not those 4 boys." Daniel smiled, a rare, genuine smile, light with relief, as if he'd just taken a deep breath after a long time. "So, we try?" Izzy nodded. "We try." From that day, they didn't rush, didn't make sudden changes. Daniel was still a father. Izzy was still the boys' anchor. But now they were teammates in something new, rebuilding their own hearts. Day by day, they learned each other's rhythms, weaving small moments of trust into the fabric of their lives. 1 year after the night Daniel and Izzy said, "We try," spring had come. The Mercer garden bloomed with flowers, and beneath strands of golden lights, they held a small wedding. Aiden wore a neatly tailored suit, acting as head groomsman. Noah carried a camera, capturing every moment. Caleb was in charge of the wedding rings. Micah was assigned to scatter petals, something he protested at first. That's a girl's job, but ended up doing with great enthusiasm. Izzy walked down the porch steps in a simple white dress, hair loosely tied, holding a bouquet of pale blue hydrangeas. Daniel waited at the end of the aisle in a perfectly fitted gray suit, looking as if she was the only person in the world. "I once thought I'd never love again," Daniel whispered as he took her hand. "But you showed me love isn't replacing, it's expanding." And you made me believe that staying, even when scared, is always worth it, Izzy replied, her voice trembling but steady. 9 months later, a new set of twins arrived, 2 baby girls, Lila and Grace, 2 weeks early, but healthy. Their 4 big brothers immediately took on supreme protection duties. "I'll change diapers, but I'll hold my breath," Micah declared. "I'll play Mozart to help them sleep," Aiden added. The house was no longer silent. Nights were filled with the cries of newborns, the laughter of 4 proud brothers, the sound of Daniel's footsteps fetching bottles, and Izzy's soft lullabies. One summer evening, with Lila and Grace asleep, Aiden teaching Noah chess, Caleb and Micah reading comics, Daniel and Izzy sat on the porch. "Do you remember the first day you walked into this house?" Daniel asked with a smile. "I do. You didn't smile as much back then. You made me smile again, and you made this whole family breathe again." Izzy shook her head gently. "The boys did that. I just knocked on the door at the right time." They looked through the window into the living room. Aiden leaned over the chessboard. Noah grinned. Caleb and Micah argued over a comic page. In Daniel's arms, Izzy whispered, "Family?" "Yes, and this time it's the family we chose. Not perfect, but full of love." Daniel squeezed her hand, murmuring, "Thank you for never walking out." The golden light fell across their faces, and with the laughter echoing from inside, this was no longer a broken story. It was a new beginning. 2 years after the small garden wedding, the Mercer family was busier and livelier than ever. Aiden was now 15, nearly as tall as Daniel, playing basketball for his school team. Noah, 13, was passionate about photography, always carrying the camera Daniel had given him. Caleb, 11, remained the family's inventor, constantly building odd creations, from paper-folding robots to an automatic ping-pong ball launcher. Micah, 9, though younger than his brothers, had taken on the role of watchman for his 2 little sisters, Lila and Grace, now just over 2, mischievous and curious like their brothers. The house was never quiet. Mornings were filled with the sounds of kids fighting over the bathroom, afternoons with the pounding of feet across the yard, evenings with Daniel and Izzy telling bedtime stories. Sometimes it was so noisy the neighbors would laugh, saying, "You can hear the Mercers and know life is good." One crisp autumn weekend, Daniel made an announcement. "We're going camping." Cheers erupted through the house. Aiden grabbed a map, Noah checked his camera, Caleb packed flashlights, and Micah ran in circles from excitement. Lila and Grace hugged their tiny backpacks, convinced they'd be exploring the forest, just like their brothers. They chose a forest 2 hours from Boston. That night, around the campfire, Izzy roasted marshmallows, Daniel told old stories, and the kids asked about their mother, Laura, now with warm curiosity instead of choked voices. "Did Mom know how to play guitar?" Noah asked. "Yes, and she used to play for me before bed," Daniel smiled. "So she sang for you too?" Lila chimed in. Izzy smiled. "Maybe when we get home, Dad will teach you that song." That night, after everyone had fallen asleep in the tents, Daniel and Izzy stayed by the fading fire. "You know," Daniel said quietly, "watching the kids now, I see how far they've come from 2 years ago." "I know," Izzy replied, eyes on the small sleeping figures. "But you've changed a lot too." Daniel looked at her, gratitude in his eyes. "I never thought I'd have a family like this after everything. But you believed, and then the kids believed?" Izzy squeezed his hand gently. "We all chose to stay. That's why we're here." The next morning, the family woke to a thin mist curling through the trees. Aiden and Noah rekindled the fire. Caleb and Micah led Lila and Grace in collecting leaves. Daniel watched, his arm around Izzy. "See," he said, "this is home, not brick walls or a roof, just all of us, anywhere." Izzy rested her head on his shoulder, smiling softly. And there, in the quiet heart of the forest, with laughter drifting into the mist, the Mercers continued writing their story. Not an ending, but a new chapter, full of light. The Mercer family's story isn't just a journey from loss to happiness. It's proof that family is not only made of blood, but of love and choice. 4 boys who once locked themselves in guilt, a father who thought he'd lost the ability to love, and a woman who arrived without promises, all chose to stay, and together they rebuilt a home. Love here isn't a magic spell that erases pain. It's the light that shows you how to walk through it. Izzy didn't replace the boy's mother, and Daniel didn't try to erase the past. They simply learned to expand their hearts, to love more, not less. And if you're in a difficult season of your life, this story wants to tell you one thing. We can't always choose what happens to us, but we can always choose to stay, for others and for ourselves. Because sometimes staying is the bravest thing you can do. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe so more people can find inspiration. Because who knows, today's story might be the very reason someone out there finds their light in the middle of their darkness.